Hi besties, welcome back to my channel, or hi, my name is Stacy if you're new here. So I'm really excited for today's video because today we're reviewing the new PMG Mothership 10 palette, Moonlit Seduction. And this is what the packaging looks like. She's stunning. And she also has an X in the middle because it's Mothership X. This is one of the prettiest packagings she's done, I think. Anyways, here's what she looks like inside. So if you want to see me demo 3 looks using this palette, and actually have a bonus 4th look on my eyes right now, then just keep on watching. And also I'll do some hand swatches and briefly talk about some palette comparisons. So yeah, just stay tuned for that. But before we get into it, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more content like this because it really helps out my channel and it would really mean a lot to me. And let's just get right into the video. Okay, so for the first look using this palette, I think I'm gonna go into more of the rosier, cooler tones. First, I'm gonna start off with this shade. It's called Plum Cabaret, and we're gonna use that as our transition. I'm adding it very lightly into the crease so it doesn't get too deep. And then I'm also gonna take the same shade, because there's only 3 mattes in here, and I'm gonna pack it on the outer corner. But you can see how the same shade actually can look quite different depending on like how deeply you put it on. Also use that same shade on the bottom lash line. Next up, I'm going to take my PMG Intensifeyes Artistry one. You don't have to do this step, but I just find that it helps the shimmers adhere better. Then I'm going to go into this slightly more rosy champagne shade, and this is the shade Blitz Venus, and she looks gorgeous. So we're just going to tap that on gently. Stunning. It's a really pretty like rose gold, but it's quite light, so it's like a rose gold champagne, but oh my god, it is gorgeous. I can't. Because you know, sometimes I take a break from my PMG shadows and every time I come back to them, I'm re-surprised by how like stunningly beautiful, impactful, shimmery these shadows are. Honestly, your look could be done here, but since I am reviewing this palette, we're gonna add a little bit more to this. I want to go into this Blitz Astral shade called Astral Lilac Aura. Another kind of like silvery white color, but it has like this lilac undertone. I'm just gonna put that on the center. Ooh, it's pretty. So it's kind of like slightly more sparkly and a little bit more purple. So in comparison, the rose gold looks quite gold because this is like very cool toned. Now my eye's looking very sparkly. I'm gonna try adding that shade to the inner corner right here. You can see it has like a more sheer kind of silvery sparkle. It's very like icy looking, like Ice Princess vibes. For the Egosal or like my under eye area, I want to go into this more taupey shade called Platinum Dusk. It's like this silvery pewter. It's like an interesting color. And I'm just gonna put that on the bottom lash line. So the color difference is not super obvious, I feel like, or like just from being on my bottom lash line, but it is more of like a silvery taupey gray color. Lastly, I'm just going to go into this deepest shade called Extreme Nocturne, and we're just going to use that as a shadow liner. And this is like a charcoal gray color, and I think it looks really good with the rest of the makeup. Okay, so that's it for a cooler tone neutral eye. Now I'm going to go off camera and do my mascara, and I'll be right back to show you the finished look. Okay, so now I'm back so you can see the finished eye look. What do we think? I think it's super gorgeous, and it's like super wearable for every day. The only like kind of slight pop of color is kind of the inner corner because it's like a very silvery, almost lavender silver. I love how it's a cool tone, but it's not too like gray. It's just in the more taupey champagne color story. And if you watch my channel, you know that I love cool tones. So this is a really pretty eye look in my opinion. Now onto the next eye. I want to go in the more warm tone direction because there are a few golds in here. I'm going to see like the warmest toned eye that we can get out of this palette. So I'm going to start off with this warmer tone transition, and this is the shade Rosewood Romantique. So I think the shade on me is more of a warm tone, but I think it's more of a neutralish tone. So on deeper skin tones, this might appear cooler, or more neutral rather, but on me, you can see that it's like pulling warm. It's kind of like a rosy terracotta shade, but it's not too orange in the terracotta, like the rose is definitely coming through. And even though these types of shades are a little bit deep to use as a transition on my skin tone, I can easily sheer it out and it works perfectly fine as a transition for me, even though like PMG's shades are really pigmented. So I'm just going on the bottom lash line again and doing the same thing. So you just want to be careful and like tap off your brush, like if you have a fair skin tone. If you have a deeper skin tone, I think these would be like the perfect transition shades for you. But on light skin tones, you just want to be careful with the amount of pigment that you're using. But I do like how versatile that makes the shadows because you can really sheer them out or build them up. So I'm going to do the same thing here because again, there's only 3 mattes. And I'm just going to deepen this on the outer corner using the same Rosewood Romantique shade. And you can see how it looks like I'm applying a different shade kind of. So I think that even though there aren't many mattes in here, they're pretty versatile, especially the ones that she chose. I think were pretty good decisions in this palette. Okay, now I'm going back into my Intensifeyes Artistry wand. I'm just gonna apply a little bit to the lid. Now I'm going into this metallic gold shade called Bronze Devotion. So I guess she called it more of a bronzy shade, but it's kind of just more of like a deeper gold. Well, it does have like these bronzy undertones. It's very smooth metallic. There's no glitters in this. Also, I would say that this shade has some antiqueness to it. Like there's an antique gold quality. Okay, so that's a good base. But now we're gonna go into this sparkly gold Blitz Astral shade. And this is in the shade Astral Gold Lust. She's stunning. Okay, we're just gonna try to place that mostly on the center. But it's okay if it kind of spreads out a little, because look how stunning that is. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm just gonna start like kind of spreading it out by tapping it. That definitely brought the Bronze Devotion gold to life, because like now it's just so much more sparkly and impactful. So I'm loving that. Next up, I'm just gonna use this Blitz Venus shade again and put it on the bottom lash line just to like highlight a little bit. I'm also gonna take this champagne shimmer shade called Skin Tense Glow. This is just like her regular champagne shimmer that she kind of includes with all her motherships. You can see there. And this is just a very true champagne. It kind of has a white undertone. Like it's like a white champagne. Lastly, gonna go back into the Extreme Nocturne shade again and use it as a shadow liner. Okay, so that's the eyeshadow all done. I'm gonna go off camera to do my mascara again, and I'll be back to show you guys the finished look. Okay, so now I'm back with the lashes all done. You can see the finished look. What do we think? I think it's a really pretty golden eye look. I think it looks really good for summer. I especially love that golden special shade that we put on top, because I think it just really made the whole look pop. But yeah, and even though it's warm, it's not like too warm, because it still has like this rosiness to it, mostly from the transition shade, I believe. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Do you like the more cool tone eye better or the more warm tone eye better? I really like both, and I will be wearing both. It's mainly just the sparkle. Like I can't stop staring at my eyes in the viewfinder. Okay, so now I'm gonna remove both of these looks so we can go into the third and final look. Okay, now I'm back with a blank canvas. Okay, so for this look, I want to feature the most special shade, which is going to be this one right here, kind of like peacock duochrome looking one. So in order to do that, I'm going to start off again with Plum Cabaret. So I'm just going to use that as a transition. And also put that on the bottom lash line. Okay, so again, going into my Intensifeyes wand. And now going into this shade, which is called VR Sextasy. Yes, that's the name. VR Sextasy. Sometimes the names are a little bit questionable. Anyway, it's a super pigmented duochrome. So we're just gonna tap. Like, hello, that was like one tap. This is probably the most pigmented of this type of duochrome I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, that just completely overtook my eye. So I'm just gonna continue tapping this out. And I only like tapped into the shadow a few times. I didn't like rub my finger all up in there. And you know, like these types of kind of blue-brown pigments are a very popular type of duochrome. But I have to say that this one is the most impactful out of all the ones that I've tried. I also like that it's like brighter. It has like a brighter pop to it, whereas a lot of the other blue-brown duochromes are deeper. But that's usually because I think like the shimmer is not so impactful, but like this blue shimmer is so like pretty and holographic. It's like really like in your face. I'm actually like stunned by how impactful it is. I'm just gonna blend out the edges a teeny bit. So I don't want to add too much to this because I feel like it would like look too much. I'm just gonna add this shade, Astral Lilac Aura. I'm just gonna put it in the inner corners. I'm gonna bring it up here, like in this little divot. Just like that, it brings this brightness. And it's kind of translucent and it's just like brightening that area, which I like. And just placing that all on the bottom lash line. Lastly, the finishing step. I'm gonna go again into Extreme Nocturne. Use that as a shadow liner. Okay, so that's about it for this eyeshadow look. So I'm just gonna go off camera and do the other eye and mascara, and I'll be right back to show you the final look. Okay, so now I'm back with the finished look, and it came out a little bit darker than I had anticipated, but I think it's just because I added more shadow than I had wanted to put, because it was so pigmented that it like went across my entire eye. But if you don't want it to be like this dramatic and this intense, you can just have a more specific placement of this duochrome shadow. I feel like this is the most distinctive look out of this palette, because all of the other shadows are neutrals. Yeah, so let me know what you guys think. I think it also kind of reminds me of like beetle wings or like dragonfly wings. Okay, now I'm gonna zoom out so we can do some swatches. So first off, I'm gonna go into Skin Tense Glow. Definitely like a true white champagne. Okay, next up we have the shade Rosewood Romantique. This is our first matte shade. Okay, so this is the Rosewood Romantique shade. So you can see on my skin tone, it looks a little bit warmer on my hand, but generally speaking, it's going to be more of like a neutral rosy terracotta shade. And then next up we have Platinum Dust. So this metallic feels a little bit creamy. Like it's not dry at all. Also, this is a more glittery metallic. It has some micro shimmery glitters in it, but overall it feels very smooth. And it's interesting because it almost has like a duochrome quality to it. Like it kind of has this dark base color you can see here when it's not shining, but then the shine on top is like a very light silver, and it also has like a little bit of brown to it, so it's like a very taupey gray shade. I actually think that this Platinum Dusk shade is pretty unique. Okay, next up we have VR Ecstasy. So I would say like just looking at it, it's not the most unique shade. There are a lot of these types of blue-brown duochrome shades, but you can see like how it's super impactful. Also in terms of the formula, I want to say that it also feels kind of creamy, and it has like a foil quality to it, but when you touch it, it's very creamy smooth. I don't know, it's very interesting. It just feels like there's some kind of creaminess to it without being an actual cream. So that's VR Ecstasy. And then we have the shade Astral Gold Lust. This is a really pretty gold shade. So again, I would say this has the same texture as VR Ecstasy. It's like a creamy but also flaky shadow. I don't know how to describe. Also, it applies very thinly. Like it's not thick. But you can see how right when you apply it, it kind of has like these little crumbly pieces, but then you just smooth it over with your finger and all the flecks kind of flatten. So that's the kind of formula it is. But it feels much creamier and like thinner than the regular Blitz Astral formula. It doesn't feel baked at all, like how a lot of her other special shades are. So that's kind of interesting that I feel like this special shade formula is different than the usual special shade formula. But in terms of performance, I actually think it performs better because it's not as flaky and dry as some of her other special shades. Like I feel like they kind of melt into the skin better. And I think this formula does well when you like tap it in, because then you're like tapping in all the kind of flaky sparkles. So here's the shade Astral Gold Lust. Next I have the shade Extreme Nocturne, one of our 3 matte shades. So it's a very smooth, dark, kind of charcoal gray shadow. It's interesting because you can tell that it's definitely not like a true black or anything, but it's still very deep for like a grayish color. So it just goes to show like how pigmented her shadows are. Okay, next up, I feel like this shade is the most dupable. So this is the shade Bronze Devotion, and it's just like a regular bronzy metallic gold that I feel like a lot of brands have this type of shade. But it is very shiny. And I like that it's not too deep. It's also not too orange, because sometimes bronzes can lean like copper, but this is definitely not copper. It's very neutral. So that's Bronze Devotion. Next up we have our last matte in the palette, which is Plum Cabaret. Okay, so this one I feel like definitely doesn't swatch as nicely, but if I like kind of blend it out on my arm, it blends out pretty nicely. But yeah, that's like a very nice plummy shade, but it's just interesting because it doesn't look this plummy on the eyes unless you build it up to be like that full opaque pigment, because you can see I used it in my transition and on the bottom lash line here. It doesn't look like this. I just like that this shade has versatility, and also this Rosewood Romantique shade, like both of these transition shades are actually quite deep, but you can lighten them to be a transition on lighter skin tones as well, and also build them up to be deeper. Next up, I'm gonna go into the shade Blitz Venus. This is one of my favorite shades in the palette because it's just so pretty. It's just the prettiest rose gold. You can see there. It's also super reflective. And again, this has the same formula as the other special shades in this palette, where it's kind of like a thinner formula that's not baked, but it also has like a creaminess, but also has a flakiness to it. But I just love that kind of pinky tone it has to it. You guys can see that it's like super high shine. So I really like this shade, Blitz Venus. And then we have the last shade in this palette, which is Astral Lilac Aura. This one's also very pretty. This one feels a little bit less creamy and more like a traditional powder. It's also very thin and very smooth. And this color is so pretty. It's that like icy lilac silver. But like the lilac doesn't show through that obviously. It looks mostly silver with like a lilac undertone. But I think if you put it like with purple shadows or like on top of a purple shadow, it would bring out that lilac tone. So it's super pretty. Love these two. That's Astral Lilac Aura. Yeah, here is the whole palette on my arm. So I actually swatched. It looks like a really pretty fall palette because you have like your kind of earthy tones with the mattes are giving kind of earthy, and then we have this kind of taupey color, almost looks green in certain lighting I feel like, and then we have the golds that are really nice for fall. So I feel like a lot of these it's kind of giving fall, no? You can see just like how impactful these are. Also, I'll turn off the front lights. So here's without the front lights, so hopefully you guys can see the reflections better. Anyway, so now I'm gonna remove these swatches from my arm and I'll be back to just wrap up my final thoughts. Okay, so I'm back on a different day because I ran out of time filming yesterday. Just want to point out that the look I did on my eyes is also from this Mothership 10 palette, but I forgot to record a tutorial, so I'll just tell you guys what I have on my eyes today. The transition shade I used is Plum Cabaret. The main lid color I used Platinum Dusk since I hadn't put it like all over as a lid shade yet. So that's like the main lid color, but then as a topper I added Astral Lilac Aura just like on the center and kind of like blended it out a little. And that made this eye look a lot more silvery and then also like lightened it a bit because the Platinum Dusk shade is actually like deceivingly kind of smoky, at least on my skin tone. Without the Astral Lilac Aura on top, it gives my eyes a little bit more of like a smoky look. And then on the bottom inner half of my eye, I just used Blitz Venus, and for the inner corners, I just used the Skin Tense Glow shade. And then I lined my eyes using Extreme Nocturne. So that's this eye look we have going on today. It's like a really nice smoky, silvery, taupey look. I just want to wrap up my final thoughts about this palette. I really like the looks I came up with. All of them were quite neutral, except for the one that features VR Ecstasy. But if you just take this color out, you can see how like the rest of the palette is extremely neutral. And I really like that about this palette because I feel like I haven't been getting the looks I got today with other PMG Mothership palettes. But also I don't own all of them. So I feel like overall as a palette, even though I have a bunch of Motherships, I feel like it's still pretty unique. And the closest one in overall vibe, since it's the most neutral, in my collection would be Divine Rose 1. But I want to just kind of briefly show you guys the difference. So Divine Rose 1 is clearly a lot more rosy tone and it has a lot of that mauve in it. Whereas Moonlit Seduction, if you take out that blue like VR Ecstasy shade, definitely goes a lot more neutral, bronzy, or taupe looks. I guess if you packed on the pigments of the mattes, it would kind of pull this palette more rosy. But because all of the shimmers, as you can see, all of the shimmers are like very neutral leaning shimmers, so overall your looks will be very neutral, whereas a lot of the shimmers in here are different colors. So I really like that all of the shimmers are neutral, and also a lot of them are cooler. A lot of her other neutrals pull warm, but like for example this Champagne pulls white, like this one is a lavender silver, and then this is also cool toned. And I like that the golds she included in here are not too yellow. Like some of her other ones lean quite yellow, or like sometimes they just look straight up yellow. Like Mothership 5 has like this really warm bronzy shade, and this is like a yellow gold, and even this shade leans warm. And like for example with Utopian Dream, you can see like this gold is really yellow. The one in Moonlit Seduction in this corner right here, it doesn't even look yellow in comparison. You can see these two. So I feel like this cool tone edition, but without leaning pinky mauve, is a good addition to her palette lineup. And then I just wanted to reiterate that these special shades, as you guys can see, they come in like a pan and they're a lot more flat. They don't have that raised baked quality that a lot of her other special shades have. For example, in Utopian Dream, which was her last Mothership, these special shades are a lot more flaky and they're baked into the palette casing. You can see how this one is baked and this one is in a pan. So I just wanted to point out that in Moonlit Seduction, all of them are in a regular pan and none of them are baked. I actually think that them being like pressed and somehow having like a little bit more creaminess in the formula actually makes these special shades better. I don't think it changes the look of the special shades, like they're still very glittery and sparkly, but I feel like it makes the application easier because they're not as dry and flaky as some of the other special shades. Like you can kind of see how in my Utopian Dream, like they have this like texture that's like raised. I think that's what gives the shadows that really impactful glitter. But so I would say that the special shades in Moonlit Seduction are even better because they're smoother, like easier to work with, more creamy, so they're not as flaky, like less fallout. If you don't want fallout at all, I would suggest using a primer and then also just doing your eye makeup before, because they do tend to get fallout just because they're so glittery and flaky. But in my opinion, it's worth it because there's literally no other shadows on the market that can dupe the look of these PMG shadows. Like if you want this exact like glam sparkle that's just like you can see it from outer space, you have to go to PMG for her special shades. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. I actually think that this will be one of my most reached for PMG Mothership palettes, just because it's the most neutral out of the larger ones that I have, and I like cooler tones. That also makes it more wearable for me. And yeah, so like this and Divine Rose are like my most everyday palettes. So yeah, overall I think she just did a really good job of picking neutral, nice shimmery shades. And even though obviously within the neutrals they've been done 10,000 times before, but just like in this particular formula, it's really nice. Also the undertones she chose I thought were pretty well thought out. Like this this Platinum Dusk shade is pretty unique actually. Kind of like what I was saying before, it's like a smoky gray silver, but it's not straight up silver. It kind of has like a taupiness to it. So actually I want to briefly compare this blue brown shade to the one in the Anastasia Nouveau palette, since it came out recently as well. And that was like the first blue brown shade to kind of pop up in my mind. So I wanted to show you the shade Peacock. And so here's Peacock swatch. So you can see it's that like blue brown shift with that kind of like tealy green pearl running through it. So VR's Ecstasy is one of those types of shades. So I just want to show you how much more impactful VR's Ecstasy is. Here's VR's Ecstasy. You can see that shimmer and that shine is just out of this world. And here's Peacock in comparison. So it's just like duller, it's deeper also, but it's mostly deeper because of the shine. When I turn my hand like this, they're more similar depth, but just because of how shiny it is, it's just a lot brighter, it's more vibrant. I would say out of all of these blue-brown type of shades, I think Pat McGrath did it best, which of course she did. Like, this is what that blue-brown pigment type of shade should look like, you know what I mean? But yeah, so anyways, I think this is one of the best neutral palettes. Yes, it has shades that we've seen before, but it's still interesting enough, and I feel like it has that it factor to give you that glam look and just make everything super pretty and sparkly. And also you have these shades that you can kind of play up if you want it to be like a little bit more colorful with a little bit more twist to your neutral look. I would really recommend this palette if you don't own any Pat McGrath and you kind of like want to get started into Pat McGrath, because this is a really great neutral everyday palette. It's a lot more wearable than some of her more like colorful and out there shades. So yeah, if you're a neutral to cool tone lover, I would highly recommend this. If you tend to only like warm tones, I probably wouldn't recommend this, because even when I did like the warmest eye look possible that I showed you earlier in this video, it wasn't that warm. It's more like a neutral bronzy kind of look. So yeah, just keep that in mind. This is definitely for those neutral to cool tone lovers. So yeah, all in all, I'm really pleased with this. I really like all the looks I came up with in this video. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. If you already picked it up and played with the palette, let everyone else know down in the comments below what you thought about it, or if you're thinking about picking it up. And yeah, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you like this video, and comment and subscribe down below if you want to see more content like this, because it really helps out my channel and it would really mean a lot to me. I hope this video was helpful, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.